The pavement ahead rippled like water, but my tires never sank. Headlights carved thin yellow slices through the fog, which hung low, curling along the edges of the road like smoke over a dying fire. The hum of the engine vibrated against my ribs, a constant reassurance in a world that was suddenly anything but familiar. Yet beneath the tires, beneath the rubber and asphalt, the surface pulsed, subtle at first, like a heartbeat in a sleeping city. I slowed instinctively, though I could feel the road urging me forward, a strange pressure against my senses. The lines painted on the asphalt, the yellow dividing stripes, the white edges, began to flicker and shimmer, as though light were trapped beneath the surface and struggling to escape. It reminded me of heat waves rising off summer asphalt, but there was no warmth, only the liquid-like undulation beneath me, synchronous with the trembling of my steering wheel. Each pulse seemed intentional. At first, I imagined it was fatigue, a trick of my eyes, the long night pressing at the edges of thought. But then the shapes formed. Shadows that weren't cast by anything tangible drifted beneath the translucent surface. Figures, tall, elongated, fluid, sliding against one another in patterns that made no sense yet felt purposeful. I blinked and they shifted, closer now, just under the threshold of comprehension. I swerved slightly, but the road corrected itself immediately. A rising wave of tarmac rippled toward me, guiding me, steering me along a curve I didn't want to follow. The fog thickened, clinging to my windshield with a wet insistence. Rain spat intermittently, though I could feel no droplets hit the car. The sound of wipers slicing through moisture was hollow, muffled, and when they paused, the silence was louder than any storm. Something about it felt deliberate, as if the world itself were listening, waiting for my next move. I thought about stopping, about pulling over, but there was nowhere to go, just a narrow ribbon of asphalt bending into the unknown. I tried to reason it out. Maybe the road was old, warped from decades of neglect. Maybe the fog was denser than I realized, the night air heavy with condensation. Maybe my mind was fraying, but every instinct told me I wasn't imagining it. The road had awareness and intelligence, a pulse that matched my own heart. When I pressed harder on the accelerator, the ripples intensified, surging outward and back, as though the asphalt could feel my eagerness. When I hesitated, it recoiled, drawing me along with subtle pressure, a gentle insistence that I continue. The shapes beneath the surface grew more defined. Faces, not full, not human, but faces nonetheless, pressed against the underside of the asphalt. Wide eyes, mouths slack, as if screaming in some silent underwater world. They followed me, they moved with me, and yet, when I slowed, the road itself seemed to sigh, its surface curling and folding like liquid mercury. I realized then that I was not merely on the road. I was inside it, contained by it. The boundaries of the world outside the car had begun to dissolve. Headlights reflected not the fog, but glimmering ripples in the asphalt itself. I could see the dim, flickering interiors of shapes beneath, corridors winding like veins beneath the surface, leading deeper, spiraling down. A chill ran up my spine. I tried to turn the wheel, to steer away, but the car slid forward, obedient, guided by the undulating asphalt. My tires never left the surface, yet I knew I was moving into something else entirely. Sound began to betray me. At first, just faint. A susurrus under the tires, a whisper that harmonized with the hum of the engine. Then clearer, voices speaking in tones that were neither human nor wholly coherent. They echoed in my skull rather than the cabin, repeating fragments. Go follow see stay. The words were warm, inviting, yet beneath them lurked the undertone of hunger, of intent. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles whitening, but the road had no need for brakes. It guided, corrected, anticipated. The fog lifted briefly, revealing the impossible. The road stretched ahead into a canyon of liquid asphalt, walls rising like skin, slick and black. Shapes moved beneath them, writhing in slow, hypnotic patterns, and I realized with a terror that had nothing to do with speed. The road itself had bodies beneath it, currents of something alive and conscious. My car, my tires, the engine, they were not riding on the road. They were being carried, immersed, part of a living organism that fed on motion, on compliance. Panic mounted. I attempted a U-turn, but the asphalt folded around itself, a slow ripple, and redirected me forward. There was no escape. The shapes shifted in response, coiling like liquid shadow, flowing around the wheel wells, whispering promises of revelation and threat. I dared not look away. The road wanted me to watch, to see where it would lead. Hours or minutes or something beyond time passed. The world outside dissolved entirely. No moon, no stars, no horizon. Only the road and the pulse beneath me. I stopped checking the speedometer. Numbers no longer had meaning. I noticed, instead, a rhythm in the tremor of the asphalt, a cadence I felt in my chest, sinking to my heartbeat, to the subtle pressure of my foot on the pedal. I was not in control. The road was a conductor, and I was the instrument, vibrating in harmony with its sinister symphony. Then the first signs of a destination appeared. Not signs or buildings, but a convergence of ripples. The asphalt thinned in the center, revealing the vaguest glimpse of what lay beneath. A vast network of interlaced forms, limbs and torsos, endless mouths opening in silent song. The road pulsed with satisfaction. My tires approached the thinnest point, and the air changed, tasting metallic and sweet. The fog parted just enough to show me. The road was not pavement, not an object, not even a pathway. It was a membrane, a barrier, a surface stretched over a hidden world I was not meant to see. A soft, deliberate vibration ran through the wheel. I understood then, without thought. It had allowed me here, it had let me travel safely over it because it needed me to arrive. My presence, my motion, my compliance. All of it had nourished it, guided it, fed it. And now, having reached this point, I was not simply a traveler. I was a visitor, an offering. The tires slid over the last thin stretch, and the surface rippled beneath them one final time. Shapes reached upward, pressing against the asphalt. Faces stretching, mouths forming shapes that mirrored my own scream, or maybe my own astonishment. The world outside the road, the reality I had clung to, fell away completely. The car did not crash. It did not stop. It sank, or rather, the road folded around it, absorbing metal, rubber, and flesh into the pulsing organism beneath. And in that moment, exquisite and horrifying, I understood the truth. The road had never been a road. It was a lens, a mirror, a membrane to something vast and aware, and it had permitted me passage only to show me the world beneath the world. Not to punish, not to kill, but to reveal, to allow a glimpse before the membrane closed behind me, erasing my existence from the surface of all roads ever traveled. The pulse continued long after the fog reclaimed the highway. A ripple lingered in the asphalt, faintly as if someone or something had driven across it moments ago. My headlights illuminated a tunnel that didn't exist when I looked again. The road ahead was nothing but black, slick asphalt, glistening faintly under the relentless drizzle. Fog coiled along the edges, curling like smoke around the beams, softening the landscape into impossible shapes. The hum of the engine thrummed through the cabin, a low, steady pulse that seemed to fill the silence, while the tires hissed over the wet pavement with a wet whisper that never seemed to end. I gripped the wheel tighter, imagining the texture of the road beneath me, the way it responded with subtle shivers under my tires, and tried to shake off the sudden unease that had prickled the back of my neck. The tunnel had appeared for only a heartbeat, arched and black, its mouth framing nothing but shadow, but it had been there, unmistakable, solid. The beams of the headlights had touched damp stone, glinting faintly as though the walls themselves absorbed the light. And then, when I blinked, it was gone. Just the same highway stretching into fog, curving with indifferent normality, as if the moment of its existence had been a hallucination. I swallowed hard and checked the mirrors. No other car. No lights. Nothing. Only the road, the fog, and the rain. I told myself it had been a trick of the fog, the headlights catching some bend in the cliffs or a cut through the trees. But my gut tightened with a different knowledge. a memory I hadn't had a chance to form yet, and my hands were clammy on the wheel. I drove on. Minutes or maybe an hour, though I couldn't tell, passed. The road stretched in stretches that should have been familiar but weren't. Every tree, every marker post seemed slightly shifted from memory. The fog thickened, curling and twisting around the headlights, refracting them into halos that pulsed with subtle insistence. And then I saw it again. The tunnel. It rose from the asphalt like a living thing, its arch leaning just a fraction, its entrance wider than before. The headlights glimmered off the damp interior, reflecting surfaces that weren't there a moment ago. Faint hints of walls curving impossibly, like a Mobius strip of stone. My foot hesitated over the accelerator. The air changed. It smelled of wet earth, mineral, something metallic and sweet that set my teeth on edge. My pulse doubled, tripled. Yet the engine hum continued, calm, reassuring, complicit. I blinked, and it was gone. The road had shifted. Curves I'd passed were now longer, straighter, or twisting in ways that violated memory. The guardrails that should have bordered the drops were absent, replaced by vague outlines in fog, or worse, by nothing at all. Landmarks dissolved. A cluster of rocks, a lonely tree, a reflective sign, gone or misaligned. My stomach knotted. Every instinct urged me to turn around, to stop, to escape. But the fog thickened in front of me, and the tunnel reappeared, faintly shimmering, almost coaxing. The thing about it was that the tunnel seemed to respond. When I thought, "Don't go there," the entrance shrank slightly, a narrowing shadow that retreated just out of reach. When I thought, "I want to know what's inside," the darkness opened wider, blacker, and the road itself straightened to lead me toward it. The sensation was subtle at first, a suggestion in the alignment of the tires, a pull from the center of the asphalt. And then I realized, the road was guiding me. I was not alone. Not in the sense of a presence I could see, but in the feeling of eyes pressing from the fog, tracking me, waiting for me to make choices it could influence. The tunnel pulsed with faint light now, edges undulating like water disturbed by a stone. Its reflection appeared in the side mirrors, though when I looked, the mirrors showed only fog and dark asphalt. Yet in peripheral vision, just at the edges of sight, I caught glimpses of forms moving, slithering beneath the surface of reality. The road itself seemed aware, bending curves, stretching distances, changing perspectives, reshaping the world around me to ensure I stayed on its path. Hours, minutes, and seconds collided. I lost count. My watch had stopped, or perhaps the tunnel had decided it didn't matter. The fog refracted the headlights into twin beams that bent around curves that shouldn't exist, illuminating empty space that flickered into detail and then disappeared again. I glimpsed objects lying beside the road that vanished when I focused. A broken bicycle, a tangle of wire, a chair that looked freshly occupied. Always gone the instant I tried to look at it directly. The tunnel appeared again. This time it was wider, its interior more defined. I could see shapes embedded in the walls, almost like bas-relief carvings of figures frozen mid-motion. But the details shifted when I tried to focus. The road ahead rose slightly, imperceptibly, and the fog clung to the windshield with more insistence. My hands trembled. I realized that every instinct I had, the desire to stop, to turn, to escape, was anticipated. The road had mapped my mind, my hesitation, and was compensating for it, guiding me precisely where it wanted. And still I drove. I felt the first real fear when the tunnel seemed to speak. Not in words, but in a pattern of vibrations transmitted through the car itself. The steering wheel pulsed faintly, the tires whispering against asphalt that seemed alive, urging me onward. The hum of the engine harmonized with something beneath the surface of the world, and in the vibrations I sensed invitation, insistence, and inevitability. I wasn't choosing to drive. I was being allowed to drive. My mind registered this in fragments. The tunnel didn't need me to enter. It needed me to see it, to acknowledge its existence, before it could open fully. I blinked. It appeared again. Now I could see a threshold at the far end of the arch, a shimmer like heat rising from pavement, a faint distortion that wavered as though reality itself were breathing. The walls curved upward and inward slightly, drawing the world into a funnel of shadow. Shapes, barely perceptible, swirled in the darkness, pressing and coiling, not hostile, not welcoming, simply aware, like a consciousness waiting to interact. I was drawn forward. I wanted to resist, but the road was patient, and I realized too late that patience was all it needed. My tires crossed the boundary of the tunnel, and the surface beneath seemed to melt into something softer, pliable, accepting. My headlights illuminated not stone, not asphalt, but an aperture into a world folded beneath this one. The tunnel was not a structure. It was a threshold, and thresholds require witnesses. I drove deeper, and the fog vanished. Not outwardly, inside the tunnel it had always been thin, perfunctory, but perceptually it no longer clung to my mind. Light bent differently here. Reflections on the windshield lagged fractionally behind the objects they were supposed to mirror. Time dilated. One heartbeat stretched to infinity. And I understood. It had allowed me to see it, to confirm its presence so that it could fully manifest. My compliance, my acknowledgement was the key. The world outside became irrelevant. The tunnel pulsed with soft, deliberate rhythm, expanding, contracting. Shapes in the walls no longer recoiled from attention. They leaned toward it. The road had guided me, manipulated me, ensured I saw what it required me to see. And now, having arrived, the threshold opened fully, and I passed through, leaving the highway, the fog, the familiar world behind. The last sensation was neither fear nor relief. It was recognition. I had been chosen not for what I could do, but for what I could witness. And witness I had. On the other side, the tunnel was gone, indistinguishable from air and fog and the endless black of the night. Yet I knew, with a certainty that would not fade, that it had always existed. Waiting, patient, watching, and I had been the one to let it open.